This is Signature TV, and this is Signature Morning from wherever you're watching us from. Many thanks for joining us. We are on channel 265 on SLTV, just in case you're wondering. You can also watch us on YouTube Live and, of course, on all social media platforms, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, and, of course, Facebook. Many thanks for joining us this lovely 15th day in the month of April 2025. So I don't know if you have seen that headline about the U.S. being compelled to release Tinubu's records, the investigated records. Apparently, under the last administration in the United States, that was stopped. I don't know what happened. But right now, with the court ruling, it is basically looking like the U.S., the FBI have been compelled to release those records. But the presidency have also, brought out a statement clearly stating that there's nothing to it. There's nothing that they would release that is not in the public domain. In the last 30 years, in fact, those issues have been in the public space for quite a while. So we would talk about the implications of that because we have a guest in the studio today. It's Honorable Barrister Nwabueze Ugwu. He's a constitutional lawyer. He'll give us an insight into these discussions. Good to have you, Barrister. Thank you for joining us. Good morning.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you, our listeners.
What for you is, why do you think this even matter, now? Now that he's the president, I know that these issues lingered before, he took over power, but why do you think this would matter now?
The reason why it matters is that it's important for Nigerians to know who actually is at the helm of the affairs. You see, the Mr. President was described by the Constitution of this country, Section 130, as 1, the Chief Executive Officer of the Federation, 2, the Commander-in-Chief, 3, the Head of State. So these are, he is the #1 citizen of this country. He is at the helm of affairs of everything in Nigeria. He is the mirror through which the international community see Nigeria. And the person, whoever is going to occupy that position, should be seen to be above board. He should be seen to be clean. He should be seen to be what Nigerians want to be seen as being. And that is why it's important for every Nigerian to be concerned about who occupies that position. And like you know, the international community is also concerned. Let me tell you. The reputation, integrity, image of whoever is in that position goes a long way towards molding the image, reputation, integrity of the rest of Nigerians in the eyes of the international community. And so the person, the question, who is your president? That question, the answer is very important in order to situate Nigerians in the mind, eyes, thinking, estimation of the rest of the world.
Does this ruling have any direct implications on the person and the president of this nation?
Of course it does. It does because if you remember, during the electoral, after the last election in 2023, there was an election petition by Peter Obi and another one by Atiku Abubakar. Now, in these two petitions, they were essentially questioning the integrity of Mr. President. They were insisting that there were certain information that presented the picture, that painted the picture, that Mr. President, that the person, because at that time he was not, that the person who had been adjudged the elected presidential candidate, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who then was the presidential candidate of APC, that there are information available to the United States showing that he had committed certain degree of crime, that if presented to the election tribunal, would be able to stop him from being declared by the courts as having even from the one been qualified to have contested the office of president. And so they tried a lot, as much as they could, to get these informations to the public domain and to also get this information officially from the American authorities to the election petition tribunal. Well, we do know that at the end of the day, there was, I think, a judge that gave order that he should be released. They were released, and but of course, the lawyers that at that time, of course, you also appreciate the fact that the Nigerian, the Court of Appeal is the trial court for presidential election petition. And so the Supreme Court is the second court and the final court for presidential election petition. At the time when this information came, the Court of Appeal had delivered its judgment. The matter was now before the Supreme Court. So when this information came, the lawyers tried to bring in this information as fresh evidence at the Supreme Court, which of course the Supreme Court rules, the Court of Appeal rules also allow any person to do if there are conditions. Of course, in law, there's condition for everything. If at the time the matter was heard, because everything you ought to present in court ought to be presented before the trial court. So if there are circumstances that made it impossible for you to present those materials, those facts, that evidence before the trial court, and you now got it after the trial court had delivered judgment, and that evidence to a great extent will weigh on the mind of the appellate court towards determining the appeal before it. You can bring it as fresh evidence. But at the end of the day, the Supreme Court said no, that this document, those facts, that evidence, those documents were not qualified to be admitted as fresh evidence. And they were refused. Of course, at the end of the day, we know what happened. Bola Ahmed Tinubu was declared by the Supreme Court as having been duly elected. He is currently our president. And all of us, of course, you know that he has to get everything that is due to Mr. President, including our loyalty.
Right. Do you think that this release would in any way impact on the reputation of the country or the reputation of the president himself, the image of the president in the Committee of Nations?
There is no doubt that it will, because like I did say from the outset, the image of the number one citizen has a lot of bearing on the image of the rest of us. It is because of what the level to which conscience of the people of this country have sunk image no longer matters in Nigeria. What now matters is what you have in your pocket, not even what you have upstairs, what you have in your bin. It matters no longer in this country. What now matters is your pocket. How deep is it? Even if they saw you on the road killing somebody and dispossessing him of his Rolls Royce, the moment you're able to successfully dispossess him of it, the man who even saw you when you were dispossessing him begins to bow to you. Because as far as he's concerned, you are now a proud owner of a Rolls Royce car. And that is, that's to say that all the values we held dear are under constant assault, under our very noses and mustaches. And so what I'm trying to say is that these things no longer matter to Nigerians, but it's most unfortunate. But to the international community, it does matter. That's why for you to be the president of America, for you to even be a councillor, a mayor in America, they go to the day you were born, because everything, your entire record is on the public domain, every human being in America. The day you were born, they know the date, the time you were born, everything that happened when you were being weaned, everything that happened when you were nursery, primary, second, the day you slapped somebody, the day you abused somebody, the day you beat somebody. So they look at your temperament. They look at everything to do with you, and they ask themselves this very important question: is this man qualified to be in this position? We're not talking of paper qualification. That's why, for you to be a lawyer, the Council of Legal Education, if you pass their exams, they give you a certificate as having passed the law exams, the bar exams. That now means that you are, just like the university has done, you remain a law graduate. Now, the body of benchers, which is the highest body of distinction in the legal profession, that actually owns the legal profession in Nigeria, that will call anybody to the bar, will now add the number 2, which is more important to the legal profession than even the first. The first is for you to be qualified in learning. That's, you have the certificate issued by the Council of Legal Education. Now, the next and most important question is, are you qualified in character? That one is the question that the body of benchers must have asked and answered before the day you are supposed to be called to the bar. So if you are qualified in learning, but not qualified in character, nobody will call you to the Nigerian bar. It's like that in America, it's like that in United Kingdom, from where we borrowed everything we do here. It's like that in the entire world. Because you can't be a tout and you'll be called to the Nigerian bar simply because you're able to pass the exam. It doesn't happen. So the other day I watched Professor Jega say at the convocation of Open University that the problem now is that Nigerian universities certificate illiterates. That for you to be given a certificate as a degree holder, you should not only be qualified in learning, you should also be qualified in character. In any event, the legal profession takes it higher. So, but the long and short of what I'm trying to say is that for you to be elected to be in charge of the helm of affairs of other human beings, you ought to attain a certain degree of responsibility, of respect, of image, of character, of humanity, that when you are there, you will be able to carry the ship of state without allowing it to falter on your hands, or probably even to sink. But And so that is it. That's why I said that it matters a lot.
Right.
To Nigerians, it matters a lot to the rest of the world. The only problem is that the rest of the world take it more seriously than Nigerians do. In Nigeria, it ought to matter, but I'm not sure it does matter.
But if it is established, if this record are released today and it's established that at some point in President Tinubu's life in the past, he had gone into drugs and forfeited this amount of monies that he is being touted to have forfeited, and some other things that he was touted to have done, and because it was neither here nor there when that issue came up before the 2023 general election. If it's established, do you think his immunity can stop anything from happening now? And does it in any way impact on his re-election campaign?
First, immunity. If you look at section 308 of the Constitution, it says that anybody, 4 positions, the office of Mr. President, the office of Mr. Vice President, the office of Mr. Governor, the office of Mr. Deputy Governor. These 4 persons, none of them can be prosecuted in a court of law from the time they take office as president, from the time they take office in that position to the time they relinquish the office. You can't prosecute any of them in court. You can't take any of them to civil court unless the person is coming, you are putting in the person's office as a nominal party. Not that you take that, the person himself. You can go to court against the president of Nigeria. That's not covered by, he's coming as a nominal party. The law is that such person must be there as a party to that suit. But you cannot now go to court and say, Okeko Kafo against President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The Constitution says no, you cannot, until he leaves office. But that does not mean that if there's anything he does in his office that for which he ought to be taken to court in a civil capacity, or he ought to be charged to court in a criminal capacity, that he cannot. No. In law, a maxim says that nelum tempus occurrit regi, that criminal prosecution is not extinguished by the affliction of time. The implication is that if somebody commits a crime today, 1 million years after, if he is seen, he can still be prosecuted anytime. Now, it means also that for anybody occupying any of those positions, after he leaves office, he can be prosecuted for a crime he committed while in that office. The same thing with a civil wrong. If any of them does anything that for which someone should take him to court, the person will not. The person will await his coming out from there. You know that in law also, there are the various states have law of actions law. That is the law that determines the period of limitation for every suit. In some states, after 12 years, you can't take somebody to court on a question of land. The reason is that that opening cannot be, course of action cannot be opened ad infinitum ad nauseam. There should be an end. There should be a close. There's a place where it should stop. If you genuinely have any grievance against anybody, you should go to court. You don't go and fold your arms and continue to wait until probably when he becomes a grandfather, you sue him to court, or when he's dead. That if his children, grandchildren may not know what transpired, you now go to court and say the man will no longer be there to defend himself. And so some 12 years, 20, 25, depending on the state. Now, Section 308 says that for that limitation, it will not, the one for the president, for any of those 4 persons, will begin to count The time will begin to count after the person has left office. So that the limitation time will now be kept in abeyance until the man leaves office, before the time begins to run, before the time begins to count for those limitation actions.
Okay, so but what's the idea really of this immunity? Because it's looking like the immunity is a stopgap for politicians to steal, to do wrong, and not be prosecuted. Because in other countries, we've seen people who lead those countries being prosecuted. Boris Johnson of UK, even while in office, he was being asked to answer questions around the COVID-19 party that he did. We also have Netanyahu of Israel. These are countries that are developed. They don't have immunity. These guys, while they are leading the country, they go to court to answer for issues that they are found wanting for. Why do we have these immunities for a country like Nigeria that is bedeviled with so much corruption?
You see, it's in Nigeria, there's a document that is in charge of everything, and that's the Constitution. It's a constitution that governs Nigeria. It's not even a human being that governs. It's the Constitution that determines everything. Says how you should breathe, when you should breathe.
The human beings wrote that Constitution.
Of course, it's human beings.
So don't you think that the idea around the immunity is to allow politicians who are in those offices to, misbehave, basically?
No, that's not the intention of the lawmaker. It's not the intention of the people that wrote the Constitution. You see, right around the world, lawmakers, when they're making the law, they are making the law on the basis of the fact that the people who are going to implement the law and the people who are to be in positions created by that law will be people who are reasonable, who have conscience, who have the interest of the people at heart, who are moved by the need to keep the society in form, to keep the society in a very good state, to make the country to become better than the rest of the world. And so they are assumed to be very good citizens of Nigeria. Now, if you now decide to go to the motor park and pick somebody there and place him in that position, there is no longer possible for that person to behave the way the people that wrote the Constitution thought that somebody occupying social position should behave. So that's the difference. Again, there is something that it's important I state here, and that is the fact that it's not just, first and foremost, you see, political power is the sweetest thing in the world. Political power is the sweetest thing in the world. Every human being who is in a political position has the propensity to be dictatorial. Because that thing is exceedingly sweet. If you remember, it was Lord Acton that opined that political power is okay. Look at in Nigeria, in America, when they elect a governor, when they elect a president, they keep monitoring him. They keep talking. Outside what the parliament does, the same thing with UK everywhere. But the citizens themselves also realize that they have a lot of work to do. Their work is to continue to check on that person. Even if he's doing wonderfully well, you still do not continue to clap. The moment he tries to deviate, you call him to order. The moment you call him to order, he comes back and remembers that he's holding a public office and that he's holding it in trust for the people.
So what's the intent of this immunity given to these governors and presidents? Because it's looking like it is, again, a stopgap for them to misbehave.
I'm honestly coming to it.
Okay.
I'm saying that the reason why it won't be necessary to give immunity to the American president, to give immunity to the British Prime Minister or some other persons, is because the people will not even allow you to get to the level of committing those things that would have necessitated immunity.
For an ideal environment.
Yes, in an ideal society. Now, if in America, when you are elected into position, they keep hammering you. There are things you do, everybody will come to the streets. And they will insist that if you don't step down, they will not go back. These could be little things. As we talk, they are currently happening in several countries of the world. They have happened before, and they will continue to happen. But in Nigeria, Delegiwa in his last essay said, before he was murdered, he said that Nigerians are great shock absorbers. No matter what you do, Nigerians will absorb that shock. Nothing matters in Nigeria, especially now that snake could swallow $1 billion naira, a rat could swallow $1 trillion naira, a cockroach could swallow a quadrillion naira. So nothing matters in Nigeria any longer, and nobody asks questions. The moment you steal the thing and put it in your pocket, it becomes your own. And everybody will begin, oh, the man has become very rich. Everybody will be clapping. You see, the point is that the way our constitution is written and the way Nigerian people behave, if somebody climbs into office, he is supposed to be an Okoma. You know Okoma in Igbo parlance. An Okoma is a masquerade that is usually dressed up and meant to be, by nature an Okoma is very violent. So if you dress up an Okoma, of course, the reason why it's called an Okoma is that it comes with a sword. Okoma cannot move without a sword, a very, very sharp machete. And the Okoma uses the thing anyhow. So when you dress up the president, the governor, vice president, is clad in that clothing of Okoma. Usually, if you dress up an Okoma, you must put a rope around the waist of an Okoma, and somebody, one or two persons, will be at the back, very far. You don't come close. They'll be holding that rope very far away from the Okoma. So when the Okoma wants to commit any crime or wants to do anything, they will draw it back. So that's the way it should be. But when you now dress up an Okoma and there is no rope around the waist of the Okoma, nobody to control the Okoma, what do you expect? And so the problem is not from the laws of Nigeria. It's not from the constitution. It's not because of immunity. It is the Nigerians themselves. When somebody is voted into power, you must monitor the person. The idea of continuous praise singing is not good for Nigerians. You don't do that in any part of the world. In America, if the American president does anything that is wrong, his driver will tell him, Oga, what you have done is not right. His orderly will tell him. Everybody will tell him. The man will even begin to feel guilty in him without any outsider having saying it. Even his wife will tell him. In Nigeria, the reverse is the case. If a president kills somebody without any reason, extrajudicially, his driver will tell him, hey, you are the best president in the world. His orderly will tell him, there's no president like you are. His wife will tell him, oh, forget these useless people. And that is it. Everybody around him, they will make him look like the proverbial lazy Oyagwanam that went to the market totally naked and everybody was clapping for him. That his dress, had become the best. Oh, who is this tailor that made this dress for you? This tailor must be something else. He's a very good designer. Look at the dress he made. Everybody will be clapping. The man is fully naked. And so that's, in a situation, in a country where there is such thing, what do you expect? Of course, it must be so. Nigerians ought to watch. Nigerians ought to monitor. Nigerians ought to call elected officials to order.
Absolutely. I mean, it just comes to the head. By this analysis, one can deduce that there's absolutely nothing that anyone can do, even if the reports comes out and is damning. It's largely nothing anyone can do, because within our laws, you can't take the president to court, and he is going to, reapply himself to the second term in office while he's still in the office. So there's practically nothing you can do about it. So after he's finished his tenure in 2031, I mean, he's finished it. He's become ex-president. There's really nothing anybody can do about it. So it becomes, you
see the reason why
important.
I said that the problem is not immunity. Remember I said that after the man has left office, you can prosecute him. You can take him to court for a civil wrong which he committed while in office. And you ask yourself, we have had several presidents. Does it mean that none of them committed crime in office? Does it mean that none of them committed civil wrongs in office? How many of them have been taken to court? How many have been proved? How many have been charged to court? How many have been... It's only some people that go out of their way to take civil suits against some of them in court for things they did while in office. But not a criminal, not even a probe of any of them, let alone. The only time they talk about probe is if the former president begins to say something that the current president does not like. He will now say, okay, I will probe him. He took this, he took that, he took this. But assuming he does not say anything against him, nobody talks about probing. Okay. And even after they've said they will not probe him, if the man now says, my brother, what is the problem? Is it not just this thing I said? Forget it, please. Forget it, Joe. That's the end of it. I won't talk about it again. All right. The probe stops. If I know they will even mention it again, you won't even know that, oh, they have stopped this probe. You would think that the probe is coming. Oh, there's a situation of anomaly. Nigeria has descended to a level that the mind cannot conceive.
Absolutely.
Signature TV. News in your pocket.